Chase Hockey with the Blue Futon. And in the digital world, we have something on Amazon Prime called Gangs of Wasseypur Part 1. Am I saying that completely wrong? Is this movie worth the rent of $3.99? Let's find out. Call this Gangs of W Part 1 because I don't know if I'm saying the W word right, but what is this about? Well, according to IMDb, it's about a coal mining dynasty spread out with 6 generations and 3 years, if I read that correctly. I don't know if that's the right synopsis for this movie. Yes, there's coal mining involved, but it is such the backdrop of the movie. It's not in the foreground, which I just can't really talk about it that way. To me, it's more about families. Bonnie versus, no, sorry, Hatfield and McCoys and something like that, based in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And I think we stopped at 1989 in this movie, but I'm going to call it basically a Hatfield and McCoys for India. And people call it Gangs of New York, but we're going to call this Gangs of W of India. So I like this movie. This is a very grounded movie, which I found very interesting with the cinematography, the backdrop, the characters, which I find a pro and con with some of them, as well as the story as a whole. I do feel like part 2 is going to be a lot more violent, a lot more gritty, and a lot more revengey. This one was a lot more story-driven of trying to get to know all the characters, even though there are a lot of characters and you kind of get confused about who is who in what dimension, as well as what timeline we are following. So with that, I'll give you the negatives of the movie. Now, like I said, one of the negatives will be the timeline of this movie because sometimes you get a little confused. You're like, okay, what year are we again? What year are we again? Okay, I think I remember that character's name. I think I remember that character's name. And okay, I think I understand the timeline going through, but there are a couple of times where I'm like, I'm a little confused about where we are in this story and who connects with what and who is what family and the other family as well. The other thing I find interesting is the main character, or the main father, who really wants revenge. Is kind of what started the foreground. Maybe he's hot in India, but I just don't see how all these sexy women there, find him attractive. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a 5 and he's a 10 in India. I don't know, but my goodness, some of them are like, okay, I like what I see. But for him, I'm like, maybe they should have gotten a better actor for it. But hey, for all I know, maybe that's what they're going for, about the whole gritty. Maybe that's what they're looking for. But man, I was like, that mofo lucky. But even though you could say he's lucky, he's very unfaithful to some of the people he's with, especially his wife and then his mistress. And now we're going to that territory of he is backstabbing too many people now. Who knows who he can trust? Can he trust his sons? Because I do feel like in part 2, something about his sons are going to come into play with what is actually concurring with the story. And then the very beginning with this major gun battle. I don't know if they're going to continue it on with part 2, but it felt kind of out of place with the guns and the bombs, and all of a sudden we're kind of going back in time. So with that scene, I don't know where that actually correlates with the timeline. So like I said, the main thing I find wrong with this movie is the timeline and how it is told, because sometimes I'm really lost of like, I don't see where we are at with the storytelling. And this one is about 2 hours and 40-ish minutes. So it's a lot of story. But like I said, I think the second one is going to be a little bit less story and more revenge. That's just my opinion for right now. But what I liked about it, it was a fleshed out, kind of a slow burn part 1 story where I was trying to get to know all the characters. There are very few characters that are not fleshed out, which you don't care about. Like I said, I think the thing that does not care about the most is the coal mining aspect. Yeah, they talk about in the beginning a little bit. They talk about with the trucks and weighing the coal down with water. But then rather than that, it starts going to more of the coal mine is kind of disappearing, and now they're doing the fishing market. So calling it a coal story, whatever. But I do enjoy with them looking at the characters and kind of fleshing them out as much as possible what they can do. I find very interesting that if there were not subtitles with the songs in this movie, I would think the songs are just randomly there to put there. But thank God it had subtitles because the songs have something to do with this story. There's subliminal messaging in it about, you're like, oh, I see what they're going with that story about the father and the son. And they're adding stuff like, who are you going to fuck over and stuff like that. And, oh, I'm going to fuck you twice. And you're going to eat it real strong. And you're just like, okay, there is something with these songs that they created for this movie to correlate and connect with all the characters involved. Like I said, I like the atmosphere of the movie. I like the characters. The violence is here and there in this movie. So if you're expecting a bombastic, violent movie with this one, No, it is very grounded, to the point. There are some funny scenes with some dialogues and them trying to shoot guns for their first time and trying to make guns, because at that point in India, the British have left, and that's one of the correlating points is British have left, and now actually, even though the British left, we're even poorer now because they don't have the government of Britain pumping their money into the country, so they got to figure out something to do. So like I said, they added some real stuff, probably some fictional stuff in this movie, but overall, I enjoyed it. A little bit slow on some story, and like I said, the timeline, I was a little bit confused, but like I said, overall, is a enjoyable experience if you like these gangster dramas. But like I said, forewarned, a lot of story and a lot of backdrop in this one. So Gangs of Wasseypur Part 1 will receive a 3.5 out of 5 Futons, which equals that 70%. So see the critics' news scores gave this one. So this one, we have critics a 97% with 31 of them. Audience score a 90% with 1,000. Forewarned though, this is for the whole movie, about a 5-hour movie. I only watched Part 1, so I'm kind of cheating with this. So here's a critic consensus overall. More than 5 hours go in a blink in this frantic Indian crime epic that spans generations and encompasses hundreds of characters in a bloody spiral of brutality, all masterfully filmed by Anurag Kashyap. So I'm probably saying that completely wrong. But no, so there is that. I only watched Part 1 of Part 2. We'll see if the score of Part 2 improves the story where I can mesh the scores. But, you know, I have a 70% right now. I enjoyed it. I think this one was a good movie, but we'll see what Part 2 holds. Even though I can give you the score of the 90, 97 to my 70, it's kind of incomplete right now. Chase Sock with the Blue Futon. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know anything else. Bluetopia. You're Blue Futonians. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. And have you seen Part 1 and Part 2? Let me know in the comments below which one is better, or did you watch the movie as a whole? If you watched the movie as a whole, Part 1 ends at him getting dragged away in a cart because something happened to him at a petrol station. So with that, that is why I think Part 2 is going to be a lot more brutal and a lot more bloody. Just my opinion.